Now, when you talk, Robert, about the Luciferian agenda,
Yep.
what is that? What do you mean by that?
I think we could also call it the Archon agenda because Lucifer is the Lord of the Archons.
Mm-hmm.
He is the king of this world and the underworld. He illegitimately took over this world from his family. They're from Orion.
He hijacked it.
He illegitimately, apparently I refer back to Wes Penry's papers, he says that Lucifer, or Enki, as the Sumerians might have called him, was supposed to ascend to the kingship of the Orion Empire. He was passed over because he was acting, well, not in accordance with their laws and their ways. He'd become a rebel. Remember, he's the original.
That's right.
All right, agitator, rebel, whatever you want to call it. And so his younger brother, Enlil, is the one who was instead became king. And so most people point to that as the cause for him starting a civil war, much like we're seeing here, in America right now again.
Right.
Okay, but I think we have to go back a little further to what I had reported back in 2011 with you is that there are these mental parasites, and my understanding is that they hitched a ride. Lucifer was, or Enki, or whatever you want to call him, he's got many different names because he's essentially an immortal being, a god. He was there with the original team that went into a forbidden zone. I believe it was a portal out of this universe or to some place that was the home for these parasites. And he became infected, his crew, his team became infected, and when they came back, they had gone mad. And they started attacking their own kind and destroying entire worlds and solar systems, which is what he did when he started the Civil War. This planet, our solar system, used to be part of the Orion Empire. This planet was actually a little larger. It was just beyond Mars. It was called Tiamat or Gaia. And when he attacked, he allied himself with his father's side of the dynasty, which is from Sirius. Even though they had a peace treaty between the Sirius group and the Orions, that peace treaty didn't hold once Lucifer, who was the heir to the throne, he became the ultimate rebel, turned around and attacked his own empire to create an empire of his own. And that is his agenda. And when he attacked his solar system, he wrecked this planet. He actually tore pieces of it off. They blew up pieces of it, and which is now the asteroid belt. This planet originally was a garden paradise. The life here was an experiment. It was symbiotic. It was androgynous. And Lucifer, Enki, whatever, came in here and literally took over by force, illegitimately claimed it as part of his empire.
It kind of echoes the Genesis, Robert, doesn't it?
I know, but okay, so here's the whole thing about all that. Again, all the history that we have was written by the victors of the war 500,000 years ago. They did not want us, their slaves, to understand how we came into being and why we're basically trapped here. What used to be a paradise planet, a garden, was turned into a prison planet that has been grooming the grooming grounds of slaves. That's
amazing work. It really is.
I just have to explain something to people, and I know it's going to sound shocking, but these gods are going to return. 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 They've never really left. They left some of their elite in charge, or I should say, they created a layer of servants.
Their offspring in charge.
Well, sort of. I mean, here's the thing about the Adapa is that it was a little bit of the Luciferian blood, the Orion. It was and mixed with some of the androgynous genes or DNA that was developing here on this, the garden planet. And then he mixed in some of the literally apes, as well as reptilians. So the primitive worker race that he genetically engineered, he didn't create, he genetically manipulated a servants, a slave race for him. And then he created another layer of what they call the Adama, where there was the king's, the royal bloodline. It has more of his blood. They have more of his blood. They're the ones, the caretakers or the overseers, for when they
Sure.
right, so that they do the bidding of the Anunnaki, Luciferian or Archon agenda.
So David Icke could be right too.
Look, everybody has their own perspective on this.
Right.
Oh yeah, he's right about the shape-shifting. It's not just reptilian. Lucifer can do it too. He's an amphibious being or god. I mean, he's lost his godlike abilities. That's the other thing that makes me think he must be infested by the parasite, those amoeba-like parasites I was telling you about.
Yeah.
I think that those mental parasites have infected quite a few extraterrestrials and caused them to be very rabid. They act like they turn on their own kind. And so no later than 2022, the gods are going to stage a return to our world, and they will present themselves as a savior of mankind.
Now, when you say stage a return, what are you talking about?
I mean that they will come out of the closet. They're going to come out under the pretense of being here to save us.
Will they come in the form of UFOs and craft?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the UN is going to be part of it, as well as the Vatican.
It'll be all prearranged.
It's all prearranged. It's staged. It's like, and the reason they're doing this is twofold. They have been grooming us to be part of their military force that's going to attack Orion again, the Orion Empire. But they also they know that this other component is coming, and this is a contingency plan. They do not want to lose a bunch of us slaves. They consider us their property. So they would consider it theft for the benevolent ones to come in here and try and liberate us openly.
Is this going to be a full-scale war?
Well, it's been full-scale civil war for a long time. The Earth has been caught up in it. We're part of it. We're pawns. Most of us are just pawns for the Archon agenda. But here's what's really important about this conversation is we've only got about 7 years, maybe less, for people to become aware of what's really going on. Because when the superwave sweeps over us and people spontaneously just wake up, mm-hmm. and they have cosmic consciousness, and they can see, they're going to literally have recall of the original garden. And I don't mean the fairy tale that we've been told. The real thing is going to be tangible, okay, palpable. It's going to feel like they're having a full-blown memory is going to come to them. They'll have a knowing, a gnosis, okay? And it's going to be, for a lot of people, it's because they've been lied to for so long, it's going to be, boy, you talk about bursting a bubble. It's going to be shattering. It will be very, very, they'll be conflicted. So this is the main reason I wanted to put the information out there. It may seem premature, but look, we got to talk about it at some point.
How will it occur so we know it's happening?
Which?
This I don't want to call it the second coming, but...
Oh, no, it's not. Yeah, look, you're talking about the alien gods returning?
In that agenda, yeah.
Oh, well, that'll be obvious. That is going to be patently obvious. There's no way that you're going to miss that one. Everybody's going to see it. However...
UFO reports everywhere, sightings, you name it.
Yeah, but there are rules to this game. And because so many of us agreed... okay, let's go back to the thing about Eve. He tricked her, right? But she agreed to it. So when it's brought up, in a court of law, in the higher courts, the council, the higher council, the Luciferians are going to say, hey, they agreed to this. Well, yeah, we did because you tricked us. And that's why the superwave is so important. People are going to know. They'll be able to see through the lie, the sophistry that's been executed here for so long. And at that point, we have to make a decision. Each and every one of us has to decide, do we want to continue to serve the Archons? Or do we want to go back to being part of the benevolent creator, the good side.
The Anunnaki may be returning to Earth according to one recent interview from a man with insider Pentagon sources. Stan Deyo says NASA and the Pentagon believe the Anunnaki will return with the coming of Nibiru. Whether it's a planet, brown dwarf star, we will find out, but something ain't right. It's likely the Anunnaki are already here. This will be a staged contact. These gods came from Nibiru. In Sumerian mythology, the Anunnaki were a pantheon of good and evil gods and goddesses. Duality. Who came to Earth to create the human race. According to some resources, these gods came from Nibiru. The Assyrians and Babylonians called it Marduk, after their chief god. Sumerians said 1 year on planet Nibiru, Asar, was equivalent in time to 3,600 Earth years. Anunnaki lifespans were 120 SARs, which is 120 x 3,600 or 432,000 years. According to the King list, the Anunnaki appear in the Babylonian creation myth, Enuma Elish, in the late version magnifying Marduk, after the creation of mankind.
The Anunnaki may be returning to Earth according to one recent interview from a man with insider Pentagon sources. Stan Deyo says NASA and the Pentagon believe the Anunnaki will return with the coming of Nibiru. Whether it's a planet, brown dwarf star, we will find out, but something ain't right. It's likely Anunnaki are already here. This will be a staged contact. The name Nibiru was taken from the old Sumerian stone tablets and is loosely translated to mean planet of the crossing. The Sumerian civilization is thus far the oldest recorded civilization located in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. Sumerians spoke about planet Nibiru and the gods called the Anunnaki, those who came from heaven to earth, and their direct influence on Earth's civilizations, and creating a hybrid species called Nephilim.
I've heard from people in the Pentagon that the buzzword in the secret of secrets in the Pentagon is the Sumerian gods are returning, and that's what they're referring to as that whole area that Peter's.
Wow! Can you repeat that again, just in case anybody missed it? The buzzword
in the Pentagon, in the military circles that are in the know about the cover-up here, they kind of in whisper tones talk about the return of the Sumerian gods. And they're talking about the what we would call aliens or fallen angels returning into the Middle East, into Old Sumer area.
The Anunnaki.
In this historical time of awakening, there are now millions of souls across the earth witnessing a powerful hidden hand manipulating humanity. Hidden, so it has no name, so it does not exist in the minds of labels and names. Hidden in the shadows. We will call it the Cabal. This great awakening is the greatest threat the Cabal has ever faced. And we have seen this criminal Cabal deploy false flag after false flag to maintain their greatest power, invisibility. Here we will explore the most dire false flag event imaginable, the fake alien invasion. The alien UFO phenomena can be traced back for millennia. We could spend days going through the entire alien UFO mystery with all its fascinating half-truths and misinformation, but these details have been made into a distraction. What matters is if it's possible. Is the threat real? The technology exists. Before World War II, Nikola Tesla died, and we are told by the FBI that his groundbreaking technologies disappeared. After the start of World War II, Dr. Walter Gerlach, an expert on the fluorescence of mercury ions in the strong magnetic field, was brought onto the highly classified Die Glocke project, otherwise known as the Bell. Surviving documents suggest that the Bell involved strange anti-gravity and time-altering effects. After the war, the entire project disappeared. Several Nazi scientists came to America under Operation Paperclip, where many of them joined Freemason astronauts and Jack Parsons' Satanist rocket fuel scientists to form NASA. Prior to this, the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951 was enacted, which allowed the U.S. government to suppress any new technology deemed a threat to the country. This led to the suppression of Stanley Meyer's water-fueled car, John Hutchinson's mysterious Hutchison effect, and as of 2010, over 5,000 inventions have been rendered secret. Through all this time, UFO sightings became more common. The entire alien UFO phenomena becomes a part of pop culture. The U.S. military develops direct energy weapons. Inexplicable damage seen at the World Trade Center 9/11 attacks and the California wildfires suggest some type of advanced weapon technology that has the ability to melt glass and steel and burns homes into a pulverized footprint of powdered ash. Whistleblowers with Stephen Greer's ongoing disclosure project have witnessed government projects wherein civilians are abducted in fake alien abduction scenarios. They have seen the top secret UFO-type crafts that our military is developing, and they claim it would easily fool the public as being alien technology. If the cabal were to deploy the fake alien invasion, it could be game over. The mask mandates have revealed how easily compliant the population is. They will believe whatever they are told, and the rest of us could be wiped out within weeks with direct energy weapons and whatever else they have up their sleeve. We are now seeing a sort of disclosure, as if they are preparing us, continuing to warn us of the alien threat. We know the cabal has the will to do this, and it seems they have the means as well.
Someday have a news conference and stand up and say, hey, we got a little surprise for you. Guess what? We've been keeping it from you. We're sorry about that, but it was for your own good, you know. You guys weren't ready for this. You probably couldn't handle it. So, but now we're going to tell you, oh yes, aliens are here. They've been here for quite a while. They're all over the place. Well, they are indeed all over the damn place. But you're not going to get a government disclosure because that's not how government works. It's like my analogy of the Pandora's box. You don't open it just a little bit. You just lift the lid just a tiny bit and boom, everything comes out. Well, when everything comes out, it's going to blow the lid off of everything because this is the biggest damn story in human history. And it's simply this: you're not alone and you have never been alone. And you have had, as I have learned over the years, an intimate interrelationship with advanced extraterrestrial intelligence from the beginning of human history.
When I was a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries in 1974 through 77, I met the late Dr. Werner von Braun in early 74. At that time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played, that game being the effort to weaponize space, to control the Earth from space and space itself. Von Braun's purpose in life during the last years of his life, his dying years, was to educate the public and decision makers about why space-based weapons are a dumb, dangerous, destabilizing, too costly, unnecessary, unworkable, undesirable idea. The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in 74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids, we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine, that the effort to put weapons in space was not only based on a lie, but would accelerate past the point of people even understanding it until it was already up there and too late. In 1977, I was at a meeting in Fairchild Industries in a conference room called the War Room. This is 1977, and they were talking about creating a war in the Gulf region when there was $25 billion in the space-based weapons program that yet had not been identified. It wasn't called the Strategic Defense Initiative, at least, until 1983. This weapons system then had obviously been going on for some time that I didn't know anything about. So I stood up in this meeting in 1977 and it said, I'd like to know why we're talking about space-based weapons against these enemies. I'd like to know more about this. Would somebody tell me what this is about? Nobody answered. They went on with this meeting as though I hadn't said anything.
Dr. Carol Rawson is one of over 450 witnesses who have come forward with inside information that they were told to shut up about. That first clip was from the Disclosure Project Witness Testimony series on Google Video. Listen to what she says, because I believe it could be very important. Here's what she said at the Press Club in Washington in 2001.
Good morning. My name is Carol Rawson. In 1974, after being a sixth grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space. And I said, you know, teachers don't stop until June. He said, no, you have to understand. This is February. And we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear in the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies. This is a system, he told me, that would never protect anyone. Even back then, he talked about suitcase bombs. He talked about chemical, viral, bacterial, biological warfare, that these space-based weapons would never protect us against. And then he told me that, in fact, if you travel around the world, which I did after he died in 1977, I met with people in over 100 countries who were friends. They didn't want to build space-based weapons. I became a space and missile defense consultant. And I worked with people around the world. I became an advisor to the People's Republic of China. They don't want to build a space-based weapon system. And he told me back then that they didn't. He said, go to Russia. They're considered to be the enemy. I got on a plane by myself. When I got to Russia, I had a list of people that I had read out of the newspaper. Chernenko was in office then. He was the only one I didn't get a chance to meet. They introduced me to everyone when I got there. And when I got back, I said, oh my Lord, this man is telling the truth. There is no threat. And I've been waiting until this day for 27 years, and I'm expecting the spin to happen, because he also explained to me that as a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said, you will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons. And now we should expect the spin, because he said part of the formula for the intelligence community is if they might have a weapon, then we have to consider that they do have these weapons. So now they do have these weapons, so now we have to build these weapon systems. And that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie. And we have witnesses here today that have shown you that these extraterrestrial beings, that these craft that have come here are now not UFOs, they're identified flying objects, and we know that they have beings in them. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down our missile silos, they can stop a rocket going into space that's a test. We have witnesses here who have worked in the classified departments who have the courage to come forward here to support what Wernher von Braun told me back in 1974 to 77. And I will testify before the Congress that when I founded the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space, which I shut down a few years ago because I didn't believe we had a chance with this huge, integrated around the world, complex weapon system, that we had any chance at all of transforming that war industry into a space industry that could provide benefits, like Dr. Greer has said, of global warming. We can end that situation of that problem. We can end the energy crisis. We can build now non-polluting technologies. Wernher von Braun used to tell me that we could have cars back then that drove around off the ground. He described this to me on beams so that we have no pollution on this planet. And we can solve the problems of the people that are urgent and potential, and the other animals and the other cultures on Earth and in space. And we can end the arms race without dislocating the industry jobs, without disrupting the economy, by transforming, Wernher von Braun told me, the war industry into a global cooperative space industry that will provide, he said, finally, more jobs and profits on this planet than during any hot or cold wartime, more products and services that can be applied directly to solving the problems of this planet. And we can have a whole planet now that lives in peace on Earth, with all the cultures on Earth, and with all the extraterrestrial cultures in space. And these are words that Wernher von Braun told me in 1974, and I will testify before the Congress under oath about everything I have said and more. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Note the part about first it will be the Russians, then it will be the terrorists, then it will be, the final card will be the faked alien invasion. This is what she said back in 2001, before 9/11 happened. And those of you who have been keeping up with 9/11 and the truth movement and information that has come out about the attacks know that the so-called war on terror is a complete lie, and we were never after Osama bin Laden, and that's all being exposed now, just like the fake WMDs were exposed in Iraq. Most people are too propagandized that they are unwilling to believe this and won't even look into the evidence. The rest don't care because they don't think it concerns them or because they feel powerless to do anything about it, and I tend to agree with them. The criminals who caused 9/11, who had the connections to all the inside security at the World Trade Centers and the cooperation of the intelligence community in the White House, will never be prosecuted for their crimes. They got away with it. And even if by some miracle we did open up a congressional investigation, prosecute those responsible for 9/11 and put them all in prison, it would be like putting a band-aid on a cancer. 9/11 was only a symptom, and we need to treat the disease. Because once the war on terror fails to give the government a reason to funnel billions of taxpayer dollars to corporate interests, they will simply find another excuse. Here we have insiders warning us that aliens will be used as the next excuse. This is why I have been warning people about the 2012 stuff, and to be very skeptical about it if and when first contact happens. Don't believe it right away. I know you'll want to. The people in charge are using all this money to build an Orwellian-style police state. This is the type of future that they feel most comfortable with, because they have always been in power, and now that they are beginning to lose their power, they are very, very scared.
What we present today is an exclusive top-secret document. That is the proof that the CIA had a secret plan to carry out a false alien invasion for reasons of psychological war. Before exposing the inside story, please subscribe Analysis TV. The details of the shocking plan are buried in a super-secret Central Intelligence Service (CIA) UFO file and published on the agency's website. The potential weapon was discussed in a memorandum by Marshall Chadwell, Assistant Director of Scientific Intelligence, to General Walter Bedell Smith, Director of the Central Intelligence CIA, who was sent in October 1952, when the CIA was deeply involved in the investigation into the wave of UFO sightings and other related phenomena. The memorandum was sent at the height of the Cold War and was taken into account thanks to the fact that the number of UFO sightings that exploded at the time could be predicted or controlled or, more ominously, even used from a psychological warfare point of view, both offensive and defensive. The memo added that reports of massive alien activity on Earth had the potential to trigger mass hysteria and panic. By 1947, the ATC Air Technical Intelligence Center had received over 1,500 official UFO sighting reports, plus others from the public and the press. In July 1952 there were 250 reports, and of all the sightings catalogued, over 20% remained inexplicable. With the advent of UFO sightings and close encounters, there was a danger of false alarms for real military invasions from the Soviet Union, or worse, true attacks were misinterpreted as UFO ghosts, as reported in the memorandum of the Central Intelligence Agency. The report added, immediate steps should be taken to improve the identification of ghost objects, that is, aircraft that we do not know, and that appear and disappear from one part of the United States to another, both visually and electronically. Instantaneous and positive identification of enemy planes or missiles must be done to prevent an attack. A study should be established to determine what, if any, use could be made of these phenomena by U.S. psychological warfare planners. Cold War paranoia was evident in the memo, which spoke of fears of a Soviet conspiracy to use UFO fear against the United States public. Chadwell continued, other intelligence problems that require determination are the possible Soviet intentions and capabilities to use these phenomena to the detriment of the security interests of the United States. The memo also asked for an investigation into how much the Soviet Union was aware of UFOs and why there was never a mention of aliens or flying saucers in the Russian media. Chadwell signed his memorial adding, I think this problem is of such importance that it should be brought to the attention of the National Security Council, so that a coordinated effort at community level for its solution can be launched. It is not clear from the publications what further work has been done in these areas, but there are no reported cases in the US or the Soviet Union that use UFO fears in any form of attack, defense or psychological warfare. However, the disclosure will likely fuel ongoing conspiracy theories that claim that U.S. military and intelligence services maintain a strong interest in the phenomena. One such theory is that the United States was planning to initiate a false flag incident using hologram technology to stage a false alien invasion as a way of introducing martial law or other public controls. There are also conspiracies surrounding the government's high-frequency active auroral research program called HAARP. It was a U.S. military science project that spawned even more conspiracies than the Large Hadron Collider. It was established by the U.S. Air Force to study the Earth's ionosphere, a highly charged and active part of the upper atmosphere. But many conspiracy theorists have always claimed that it was a cover for secret tests to control the weather, manipulate the weather and trigger powerful earthquakes in the faults, or even to search for alien technology after UFO capture, or create a hologram with a false flag. The Air Force closed the project in 2014, but some say it continues.
Hello and welcome to On the Record. Those of you who joined us last week were probably amazed, as I was, by some of the latest research in the field of UFOs. There is so much to talk about, however, we were unable to fit it all into one program, so my guest again this week is UFO researcher, former state Senate candidate, and award-winning pilot John Lear. Mr. Lear, nice to have you here again.
Always a pleasure to be here, George.
To begin with, we have this concept of the people from other planets as little green men. Are they green from what you know? Are they all the same, or we got different kinds of them?
George, there's at least 70 different species, and probably more. But yes, as odd as it sounds, there are little green men. That's not the ones we usually see, though. We see the little gray ones. They're about 4.5 feet tall. We see the ones that are called the Nordics. They're about 7 feet tall, look like us, but they're invariably blonde hair and blue-eyed. They're one of the species that we have on ice. One of their crashes we recovered.
Obviously, with different species, they have different motives. I mean, are there good aliens and bad aliens from what you know?
And bad aliens and all kinds of ways and reasons for interacting with us.
What are some of the reasons? Why would they be here?
Genetic experiments, trying to... there's a misconception here. People think that our space brothers would bring us, good things and teach us how to get rid of all our diseases. And if you stop and think about it, that may not be the best thing, because if you had a society without any disease and everybody starts living 150 years, that creates a lot of problems. So they would not meddle in that way.
You believe in part that the movies E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, were not entirely just the creative products of some Hollywood director, that maybe there's more to that. Why don't you explain?
They were carefully guided by representatives from MJ12, who is this organization that is in charge of the cover-up, in order to get us ready for the release of the information that there are indeed aliens. And in both those movies, they used small little creatures and in order to get us ready for this release of information.
So to prepare us that the idea of benevolent aliens from outer space are going to help us out.
Unfortunately, they're not so benevolent. So they made probably one of the most disastrous mistakes when E.T. was put out. At that time was before we discovered what I call the double cross or the grand deception. And they were trying to get us used to the benevolent little creatures, but that isn't the case. The EBEs are so advanced, they're at least 500 million years advanced from us, and probably more. They can move by thought.
Move by thought.
And they can also disappear. But they can't move by thought through electromagnetic facilities. So they built this facility. There was two, one in Los Alamos, and one either at Edwards or up at the test site.
Groom Lake, Nevada.